In sales, we tend to focus on that magic bullet. What is that one little thing that's going to get me tons of meetings, close tons of deals? What's the secret? That's what we all hear. That's all what we all search for. But what it ends up being is the whole sale. Being able to adapt your process, your approach to the problem that you need to solve to sell your product or service. And this usually is thinking outside the box, doing something different consistently, or more often, a bunch of things, a whole collection, a whole approach to it, and owning that responsibility. Now, this is a little counterintuitive, or people say, well, I do that. Yeah, well, do you really do that? Well, that's not my job. That's someone else's job. Okay, but does it affect you and your revenue? Yes. Then it's your job. And today's interview is a little bit different, and I really encourage you to give it a chance, because you might say, well, that's not my industry. That's not what I do. Look at it from a different perspective. How can I apply these lessons to what I do? The most common pushback I get about the courses is there anybody in my industry in the course? Well, if you're in B2B, then the problems are pretty similar. The approach is a little different, maybe a lot different, but you can certainly learn from them. And the other thing is, in my geography, in my industry, people are different. They don't talk. They don't want calls, emails. Well, and I just had this in the office hours. Well, how did they meet? You exist because people meet. People are social creatures. People want to talk about themselves. They don't want to talk about you, but they do want to talk about themselves. And we build up these limiting beliefs that limit our ability to sell. Now, is it easy? No, it's not. But I think you'll get a lot out of this interview. This was, at the end of it, I was like, wow, this guy gets it. Now, his background is well suited for this. He came out of hospitality, which seems to have a very high correlation with the success in sales. Why? Because it's hard work. It's interacting with people. It's service first and then reward. But there is a variable income. It is stretching out of the normal role, owning responsibility for problems you did not cause and correcting them, and being able to read cues from other people, connect with strangers, help other people out. Those are important life skills that are hard to learn. Also, I'm coming up with this idea of an after show. If people want to talk about the particular interview or sales in general, I'm experimenting with Clubhouse. I don't know if you've known Clubhouse. It's a new social networking app. It's currently only on the iPhone, iOS. My handle on it is Brian G. Burns, all string, no underscore, dots or anything. So Brian, BRIANG, BURNS. So you can just follow me there. I'm thinking of like Monday at noon or Tuesday at noon, Eastern Time, U.S. Send me a little note over LinkedIn if it's something you'd like. Follow me there, and I'll probably start announcing the times. And I may do it as I can. It might be ad hoc, where I'll just jump on and see if there's anybody else on, and you'll get a little notification that I'll be live there. As a way of just talking over the interviews, getting your feedback, what you'd like to hear, what's working today in sales and what isn't. Also, check out our friends over at CoVideo. Video email. I'm getting lots of questions about it. When does it work? How does it work? A lot of people in the course are working it into their mix. of communications. Video gives you that chance to be seen, gives you that chance to show either what you do or what they do, or how you can help them do what they do better. And video is the future, at least for now. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end and give everybody an update on what's going on my side in the courses. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Mike LaRook. Work with a company called Unforgettable Coatings. We are a painting and coatings manufacturer. My background comes from pretty traditional. I'm from Ohio. Went to Kent State University, and actually went into hospitality after college. Was everything from a bartender to a manager in the food and beverage industry, and did that for many years. Moved out to Las Vegas and did that from the age of 22 to 35. And I was actually recruited from a bar restaurant I was managing to get into the sales side of things. And basically been doing this for about, almost 10 years now.
What was it like getting used to? It's different than bartending and serving and managing.
Oh, yes. I never wanted to. It's interesting. I always said I did not want to be in a sales position. So I always wanted to make sure that I was in a position that, you have a captive audience when you're in a restaurant. So, and so what I looked into when the industry that we are in is basically the HOA painting service or multifamily as in apartments or commercial repainting side of things. And the way I thought about it to justify the switch over was I was like, this is not a sales job. You're going to need paint, and we're going to supply that service. That's how I justified to make the switch. Fun, quick little story is had actually decided to not make the switch. And then my dad and I had a long conversation, and he said, "Are you familiar with the term nesting?" And I said, I think I know what it means. And he explained, he's like, "We're very comfortable in a position where you're at." And he said, "Does this job possibly make you uncomfortable?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What's the worst that could happen?" I said, "It could not work out, and I would come back to restaurants." And he said, "Okay." He goes, "Make a decision tomorrow." And then I did make it tomorrow, and I actually did make the switch.
Well, that's it, because hospitality can pay really well. The challenge is it doesn't have a long tail.
Yes. It's also hard for life, and
Yes.
and it's fantastic in your early 20s, right? Like you're
social.
Yes, and working at night is not a horrible thing, but when you start to get into the family side of things, you work nights, weekends, and holidays.
Yeah.
And when you're on the management side of things, you are the one. If somebody doesn't show up, you're the one that goes in. And out here in Las Vegas, we have a lot of graveyard bars, and there's nothing worse than sitting at home at midnight, and the swing shift bartender calls you and says the graveyard bartender didn't show up, so you go in.
Yep. You're the safety net.
You are the safety net. Yep.
Right. And then when you turn 50, that's not what you want to be doing.
Oh man, it's rough, and you can see it. Like if you look at somebody who's 50 years old in the food and beverage industry, they have a tendency to look 60. Like it adds 10 years.
It wears on you, standing up all the time, stress.
Oh man. I remember once I was between jobs, and it took a month in Vegas. Things were not clicking along, and I took a month to get a job, and I was doing some side stuff in between. But from that month, when I went back to work and had to be on my feet for the whole shift, 10, 11 hours, my back was, and I was 27 years old at the time, and it killed me, like my back and my feet, and just 1 month you lose that ability to stand. And we know, like it is in a sales position. When I go do a trade show for 4 hours and I stand there for 4 or 5 hours, I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. And I used to do that 10, 11 hours every day.
Yeah. And, trade shows even worse because you don't get much walking. It's purely straight one spot.
Yes.
And so when you got into sales, I take it, did you have much inbound, or was they hired you to go get new business, right?
So, and just so you know, it's interesting. The company I started with, just like my dad and I talked about, did not work out. I worked there for like 8 months, and I was given a very small book that I had to kind of gain some traction with, and I was only given about 8 months to do that. And it's the company I worked for was very, let's say, kind of like I would say CRM based. They're very metric based. And some of these, like in my business, it's a long time from the point of RFP to actually close of the deal. It can be. I've had as long as 4 years, but
Oh.
it can be as short as a month sometimes. But generally speaking, it's 6 months to a year on the larger projects. So that 8 month time frame was just not enough to really gain some traction.
And I've been on the board of a homeowner association.
Yep.
It's a nightmare.
So yeah, Brian, that's actually funny. I'm on. I was going to talk about that too. I'm actually on a board as well, just of my homeowner association, just partly so I can fully understand how we think. So you understand exactly what I do. You open the bids and you look at what we do.
Well, you get, and everyone has different values, different point in their life, how long they plan on owning it,
Yep.
and what their particular, viewpoint of the property is.
Yep.
And
Yes.
it's just frustrating. Some people are like, well, look, I put my money in, I want my value out.
Yes. Yes.
Others like look at it a bank account, like they're going to pass it along into the next generation or something.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the important part is, and there's a fiduciary responsibility that you're carrying as a homeowners association board, right? And basically, some carry that with high levels of prestige, and others are a little more loose with that, right? And that's actually something I teach to our crew is understanding the sociology and psychology of the board member. Why does somebody want to be a board member? And it really does fall into probably about 10 different categories. But and we actually break that down so we kind of understand. You have to understand you might have the president, but that's not the alpha of the board either.
Right. Yeah. And that's it, because none of them are getting paid to do it. It's
Yep.
all.
Oh, yeah, voluntary. So what, what was this is actually, I do this often. What was your reason for joining the board?
It was a lot. What I saw, because it was like a year and a half, 2 years. It was basically one neighbor said, well, why don't you get on the board? And my particular part of the property had something that needed attention that didn't affect anybody else as much as it did me.
Yep.
And it did affect the public grounds as well. But, I was really, me and a couple of neighbors were the only ones that saw it. And it was a very expensive fix.
Yep.
And if I didn't get on the board, it never would have happened.
Yeah. So you did it for the overall greater good.
Yeah. And then, of course, you get the alpha where, the people who don't work, who make it nosy neighbors, who don't want to spend any money on anything.
100%, and I find it's very interesting if you look, if I meet a male board member that is retired, the first thing they always tell me is they tell me what they used to do. They will say it within the first 1 minute of conversation. And I find that very intriguing because most are there and a lot were important high level positions. And so this triggers some of that self-worth. I think as men, we identify with work very, very highly, and if you meet a female board member, they will talk more about the project much quicker, and they do not tell me what they did prior often.
So I feel your pain. And how do you sell to that? Have you found a particular process because you must prioritize these projects, because from the time you get the bid, like you said, to the time they award it and you get started.
So in that, I'd like to back up a little bit, just kind of break things down. When I came in to the position, I was nervous about selling. And in the prior company, worked on a lot of sales tactics. They I remember we had a training that said how to get a signature in a board meeting. We even did role played this. And I remember thinking that did not hit me as things I liked, fast forward, good thing it didn't work out, maybe because I'm different. Number one, I never think that way. The project will happen. And the length of time is not up to you to determine. If there's more time allowed, that gives you more of an opportunity to basically, add other pieces to it. Um, and I'll give you some more of the breakdown, but I do think about it like counting cards in blackjack.
Yep.
Are you familiar with that? Like the plus ones. And the more plus ones you get, that means more face cards that are out there, which can increase your tendencies. But that's basically what I think of as we're getting closer and closer to the decision. Can we add more plus ones? And the important way to think about that is Brian, since you understand it, when you get to that high number and they are going to deal out the hands, does that guarantee you're going to win the next hand? No. It just has increased your odds, right? Like you've increased your probability. So do not change the timeline. Just try to get as many plus ones as you do. And even when we come up to that decision point, when I'm laying in bed that night, the only way I'm okay with a win or a loss is when I think I have done as much as I can that I can think of at this time. And I always say at this time because maybe in the next proposal, I'll be able to think of something else creative or interesting.
Well, I got to believe that you run into lowest bidder.
Yes.
And the people on the board, there are the people that assume everything is equal except for the price.
Yes. Yeah. So that's great. Great question. Go ahead with the.
Well, I ran into that where they changed landscapers every year.
Yep.
And we got a great landscaper. They were 10% more expensive, but they were great.
Yeah.
And of course, when I left the board the next year, it was a bunch of college kids.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was probably 10% cheaper, but they were terrible.
Yes. And we see that. And I the way I approach that is, again, being on a board, I fully understand the fiduciary responsibility, right? So you come in high, that's rough. That's going to be very hard for a board to choose you, right? If you come in mid, you're in a pretty good spot. If you're mid to low and you're just in that, if you're getting sometime, and by law in Nevada where we're at, you have to get 3, they have to solicit 3 bids. Yeah. But if they get 4, so the way I approach that is sometimes I will give options. I will show here's a value based in the paint world, in the coatings world, we have the good, better, best, right? So I break down different options so they can look at that, and I explain those options and then allow them to choose where it's going to be the good, better, best. And also in those positions, I show, our good price might be slightly higher than or way higher than some very small. Not some guy who doesn't even have a full contractor's license, right? Like so you have to compete in properly and also follow through with what you do. So when I build a bid, I build it with packing in as much value into the price that I've given. Yeah. Because you ever hear that term like elite salesmen sell elite products? I think that's a good term. The best people work for the best companies, and they have a tendency to gravitate to that. But I also think we underestimate how important it is the salesperson in the actual product or process itself.
Right, because the fiduciary responsibility isn't just to price; it's to maintain the community at the standard that has been set.
Yep.
And, because we had one particular board member just didn't want to spend money on anything. And I tried to explain, we're not here to save money. We all can save our own money.
Yep.
We're here to judiciously maintain the community within our budget.
To make money when you sell your property, right? Like, so the idea of an HOA only is to keep the property value up. Without that piece, an HOA board would not exist. If you look at all the laws that they write and everything, they claim it all this, but it's flat down to one thing: it is maintain property value. Period.
Yes.
And that is like if your neighbor has a car on jack stands, that hurts your property value as well
Yeah.
as theirs. And that, so those are the regulations that come out of that, but it still comes from property value.
And because if I was selling to my board, I would have
Yeah.
ran, because I know that they're going to go with the lowest bidder no matter what, or they would delay everything. There was like a stairway was broken, took 5 years before they fixed it.
So, and that's a good thing about our industry is we can, once you understand that, and this is, I don't qualify, I don't use that term, that regular term of qualifying too much, like,
but it's counting cards. It's evaluating your hand.
Exactly. So, and you, the RFP comes out, I try to set up a meeting with the board, which I consider a +1, right? If you can get in front of the board or the owners, if we're in multifamily or commercial side of things, then you're stepping forward each and every step, including the managers that manage these properties. So those are all I consider the +1s, but you might learn something and you recognize, like, I'm going to have to build a value-based proposal here. You could choose not to bid it, but you can usually build a proposal around. It's very like Progressive. There are significant, we say good, better, best, but there are multiple companies, multiple approaches, and exactly what they want. And like you can talk them down to a 2-color scheme versus a 4-color scheme, and that's going to save them money. And then you explain that, and you say, if you want to do a 4-color scheme, that's harder and it takes more time.
Well, I like a couple of things about that. I like giving the good, better, best. That way, if they focus on price, they know what they're giving up.
Yeah. They oftentimes won't choose the good or the lower one when you do give a couple options. I used to do good, better, best because I was follow that. And then I'm a big fan of TED Talks. And there was one by Barry Schwartz was the paradox of choice. Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah. Don't give too many choices.
And it's amazing how, 3, he identifies as okay, right? You will have confidence in your choice. But with 2, you have the highest level of confidence in your choice. So I have over the years backed down to a 2 choice, 2 levels when I create those proposals.
Yeah.
More often than the 3, just based on Barry. And he's actually right. We deal with a lot of colors, and I present colors to a board. When I first got in the industry, I'd get a bunch of renderings and I'd say, here you go. And I'd give them like 15 renderings, and this board, they were lost, and then over time, I've been able to whittle that down, and I give them 2 choices out of the gate, sometimes 3, and then have them try to narrow me down from there. And then I'm presenting more choices as we move forward, but they're only coming in these stacks. So they're not coming all together, which is overwhelming for them. And it also, as Barry says, it creates the least amount of satisfaction when you do make a choice.
Yeah. I like it because, like a lot of auto dealers, they give you the cash, lease, loan options.
Mm-hmm.
And that really starts to get you confused.
Yes, exactly. Too many. And then you walk away like, did I make the right choice? Because if everything's on a spectrum, right? And piece by piece by piece is not as far from the other piece. So meaning that you chose something and you should have more confidence because you had so many options, but you feel less because it's a small percentage. You chose 1 out of 10 options. You feel that you had a 10% chance to get it right.
Yeah. And I think early in the process, more choices are okay because it spurs conversation.
Yeah. It can be, like I said, but boards
and
are
if
tough.
It pulls out value of
Yes.
what they care about.
Yeah.
Because if you get a board member who really cares about paint, maybe they were a painter, maybe they were a contractor, maybe they have a certain history with it.
Yeah.
Or it personally affects their piece of the property.
Yeah, exactly. And they might have, a lot of them do come from my favorite ones are the ones that come from the contracting background. In this, I'll give this little background here, a step back, is when I did come over from food and beverage, I'd gone to college for hospitality. I had been in college. I worked for, at the time it was BW3's, a very small bar and restaurant at the time. And I worked in the ninth location ever in Kent State. And now it's obviously Buffalo Wild Wings, which is a monster. And even opened the first one in Las Vegas. But my point being is when I came over to paint, I was like, wow, I did not know anything. You know, I knew as much as anybody who had went and bought some paint once in a while at Home Depot. So I did not even understand the good, better, best. I did not understand what it is. I'm a bit of a science nerd. So the first thing I did is I just went overboard and I dove in and I studied everything I could and learned everything I could and asked as many questions as I could about paint. Um, and over the years have become a bit of a technical expert when it comes to that. And that has served me a couple ways. I initially thought it would serve me just because it helps build trust when you're talking to somebody and they have some questions. But over the years, I've recognized that there's a secondary piece that when you know about what you sell or do, you have a higher tendency to be whom you are to the person. And meaning like you, Mike, as in the third person, me, I can be more of me, you know, when I know that I don't have to fear them asking a question about what we're supposed to do on this type of stucco. We don't necessarily have to talk about this type of stucco, but if they do, then I am prepared. Therefore, I'm not thinking about it. Therefore, I'm actually being more of me.
Now, on the outbound side, you don't really approach the boards directly. Do you go through the management companies?
Correct. Yeah. So we basically market our services to the management companies, and and so we have kind of two levels of clients, right? So we have the management companies and the managers we work with. So those are our clients. But even in just by term, because they don't sign the checks, but they're super important, obviously, and we've established relationships with them. And then they are the ones that send out the RFP. And sometimes we go to trade shows where some board members are invited. And we have direct contact. So, but it goes through managers more often.
Yeah. And what do they care about? They just care about frictionless companies.
Yes. No. No. I mean that's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Like who can do the best job? Who can let them receive the least amount of calls from the board, right? And who can? I think it's important too is fix problems, right? Like how fast can you fix problems? You know, the see it, own it, solve it, do it approach. You know, you get a phone call and there's a problem, you go correct it, and it's off the manager's back. You know, we also try to circumvent that, and you know, we post a lot of notices that have our number on it, so they call us directly for a lot of things. So when we do a project with them, the manager's hopefully getting less calls because we're A, circumventing it, and B, correcting that as fast as possible. And this is a piece of advice I'd give. In my position, those calls are going to come to me, and you cannot hand it off. If you hand it off, it will or will not get done. And that's not, it's just not designed in that system. So you a lot of times you can, I try to correct it if I can. You know, we're a very forward thinking company to the point that we have a credit card. We all have a credit card with a monster limit that we have we don't have to have any approvals. We can just go do something. If somebody we broke a screen, you know, I could just go pay for one to go fix it. I can go buy a gift card immediately. I can pay for a car to get washed without even a question. I don't have to call and get verification. That changes the overall feeling of how you operate on the flip side. Because if there's a problem, can I solve it? I will solve it. It's over.
Yeah.
That's it. And it becomes it becomes frictionless. And I'll share a quick story. I compare it to this. So imagine going into meeting with a board and there was a full repaint that they're deciding on. Okay. And at this full repaint, the board says, hey, we have a broken window on the front of our clubhouse. Would you throw that in? Would you repair that? And this is prior to the choice. The answer is yes. Right? Like, yes. And I always find this interesting. So same scenario, but flip it a few months. The full repaint is over. Okay. And now 4 months have passed since that repaint is over. A lot of these are condo communities. A homeowner comes home and they see a windows broken in their spare bedroom that they don't go into often, which could have happened. It was summertime when it was painted, cold, pressure washing, right? What is the answer there, right? Now, a lot of people start to say it's been 4 months. How do we know?
It's not about fault.
Yes, it's not about fault. It's about perception, and just fix it. This was a full repaint, and yes, the money has been paid. Well, which in theory should be even more idealistic. The first one, you haven't gotten any money. The second one you have, and now so in that situation, I just say, yes. Sometimes boards are like, we don't think it's you. And I was like, that's fine. We'll take care of it.
Understood. Yeah. We're not detectives. We're fix it guys.
Yes. Like, what is your problem? Okay. I'll fix it.
Right. Because having been on the board, it was the management company that would come to us with vendors.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
And their income is fixed, whether they do a great job or they do nothing.
Correct.
So anything that you get them to do something, that means you're a hassle. And we had a major project done here this summer, and we were told to call the management company if there was any issues. And of course, the contractor came and parked in front of my house, blocked me in.
Yeah.
I'm going to call the management. No, I'm going to go out there and yell at them.
Yes.
Get your car out of here.
Yes. Just that's funny. Did they respond quickly?
Well, they moved the car, and the next morning it was back there again.
That's rough.
But that's the things that a bad contractor pays no attention to, because they're like, we're going to be here. We're never going to get called again. But you're in front of a board member's house.
Well, I think that falls into line where you see production on one side and sales on the other.
Yes.
And we, even as a company at times, I myself, I kind of like getting paint on my hands. I came from food and beverage, which is so heavy production, right? Like as a manager, I was a cook in college before I became a bartender, and in a kitchen is just a factory, but it's more complex than a factory because it's dealing with perishables on the front end. So you have days, or if it's frozen, you have weeks and months before this perishes, which is different than if we were working in a tire factory. We would be able to have something, raw materials that could last for years. And then you flip it. Once it's produced, once we make that tire, it's got 5 minutes to get, and it's even less than 5 minutes, right? Like if it's sitting in a window 5 minutes. So, I mean, they have to be eating it within 2 minutes from the point of production. At 5 minutes is where you're now in trouble, right? And you might have to remake that tire, as in the food. So when I came over to this, being involved with the production side of things, it lined up very similar to anything in sorry, the light turned off here. It lined up with anything that was like a banquet order. BEO, banquet event order, is identical to what we do when we start a project. You have all the front end details, what the actual project's going to be, or the items of food, and then I was able to match that up, and it was native to me. So I get very involved with that production. Then we have that separation, though, at times where if you hand it off over to production, they don't have the full understanding. They never met with the board, right? They don't understand the promises that were made, and they can't carry that with. So being involved in the production side has so many pieces. Number one, it follows through with what you said when you're at that board meeting. Number two, it helps you understand the product for future sales. And number three, it's just an overall confidence of what you do, which comes through in every single day. I was told a story. I was told this story this morning. There was a cake manufacturer that came out with a really good product years ago that you only needed to add water to bake a cake. And it was highly unsuccessful because people would do it and they did not have the pride when they brought it to somebody's house and said, I baked this cake. So they took out some of the pieces that they were able to dehydrate and put in there, and it was milk and an egg. So you now add milk and egg to the mixture, and people, it became highly successful just from adding those ingredients. And the same thing with sales versus production. Be involved. It doesn't have to be hugely involved. You don't have to be spraying paint on a wall, but you have to, if you're there, if you have to pick up items at the paint store or run to Home Depot, these things are monster value adds, which show through later.
Excellent. Hey, I really appreciate your time today, Michael. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, I guess I'm Michael LaRook on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's it. But I'm not too big on the social media. So
no,
but yeah.
Well, we'll find you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, and it was a good time, and appreciate the interview.
Now think of the genius of this approach that you heard in the interview, because I've been on the other side, not with Michael or his company, but the nightmare of being on a homeowner association board, because it's this almost classic government type situation where the board doesn't go out and solicit or try and find service providers, landscapers, masons, painters. They rely on the management company. And the management company is a classic, almost government type thing where they tax the homeowners. It's the third most expensive thing is them collecting the money from the homeowner association without providing any value. So all they do is kind of like pay the bills, collect the money, once in a while attend the board meetings, and when they're there, they hate being there because they know every action item they get cuts into their profit margin because they have to do something. And even showing up and then listening to the board members, it's not like a company board where everyone's paid to be there, everyone's incentivized to be there, and everybody has a skill. These are just Mutt and Jeff, people who happen to live in the same community and all have a little bit diverse needs. Everyone values certain things differently. And that's where the nightmare becomes. And some people have like no experience working with others. Some people have personal grudges against each other. So believe me, I got off of it as fast as I could. And I was not surprised how the lady who got me on it was so happy to get me on it so she could get off of it. So that's the type of sales situation you run into. And it kind of is characterized by that committee that we so often hear about, because who has the personal wins? Somebody on the board typically has a personal win. They want that service more than the others. And whether it's because where they're located in the community, how long they're going to be there. Some people are investors. Some people are actual residents. And in one case, we had somebody's boyfriend, wasn't even an owner, was on the board. And I was like, well, wait a second. We have to have at least owners. Why can't we have someone's housekeeper be on the board? It's just this craziness of unstructured, little bit of skin in the game. But this happens a lot in our sales. Now, you could have approached it a lot differently. You could have just worked with the management companies, do the bid, and see if you win on price. But that's not what he did. He took a holistic approach. And I love that credit card idea, because so often little things go wrong. Because even contractors, they have day laborers, they have part-timers, they have contract people, and they don't care about the community. They don't care about the management company. They're working for a week, for a gig, and they do what they want. They park in front of people's houses. They eat on someone's stairs. They leave their trash around. All of these little things annoy the hell out of one of the stakeholders. And in our sale, how can we approach this? Because we all have it. We all have post-sale support. We have problem solving, we have shipping and receiving, we have license activation, legal, and we tend to say that's not my job. And you're right, it isn't your job, but it affects your job. And when you take ownership in solving it for the person, it's great. I even get it with the courses. I had one person who, entered a bunch of accounts for their team, and they spelled the email address wrong. And so, of course, the person did not get the notification. And it was a simple and it was a difficult name to spell out, and you could see how it could happen. And we had a couple of back and forths. They felt I was not helping them. I go, okay, let me dig into it. And I had to take a screenshot and send it to them. And a day later, oh, look, we just noticed it was spelled wrong. Okay, but you did it. I didn't do it. I don't touch that stuff. It was like little things to get people on board. And it just happens. This is what happens when you deal with people, and we're all dealing with people. And if you take that holistic approach to your sale, you start to understand how these sales take place. And we all think it's just about price, reputation, service, quality. It's some mix of the whole thing, and a little bit different in each case. Now, if we step back and we say it's outside of our control, then we're not going to see it. We're not going to change it, and we're not going to get the result from it. But if we take the internal locus of control and we say, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to resolve it, and boy, did it sound like hospitality. Because when he gave that example of, there's a few minutes, certainly less than 5 from the time the chef or the cook puts it on the plate, puts it under the heat lamp, and it hits the table, that's a critical time. You can't be out for a smoke or chit-chatting with the other servers. You got to be there at that right time, get that to the plate to the table, make sure the person likes it. It is what they ordered. It's at the temperature that they like. It's what they expected. And let's face it, who could make a mistake in this? The person ordering it, their interpretation of medium rare might be different than the chef's. Or the chef left it on there too long. Is it the server's fault? No. But if the server does not take responsibility for it, you can't argue with the client, even though they're wrong. You can't argue with the chef, even though they're wrong. You just have to resolve it. And we are that middle person, and deferring responsibility does not increase sales. Ownership of responsibility increases sales. So I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope you stuck through it to the end. And let me know what you think of the Clubhouse idea. Brian G. Burns on Clubhouse. Also on Instagram at Brian G. Burns if you like to watch the videos. I keep them up on YouTube as well. And I'm always looking for great guests for the show. If you know a great salesperson, or you are a great salesperson or sales leader, and you have a unique view on sales that you'd like to share with the community, I'd appreciate it. If you see my stuff fly by on LinkedIn, please give it a like, comment, or share. Tell a friend about the show. Find somebody else in sales that you can, have either an accountability partner, conversational partner. This is what we're getting out of the office hours, the ability for people to express what's going on, their view of it, and that's how people learn. Yes, they can watch the videos, they can schedule the one-on-ones, but a lot of people need to hear other people and the success that they've had, to be able to hear the struggles that they go through and the resolution that they have. But a lot of times it's us holding ourselves back. And the key thing that I've learned is when the tipping point is when they have success. Until they have the success, there's this level of doubt. So you have to get that success as fast as possible. Identical to what we do in sales. When did you start to get your groove on in sales? It was when you were closing deals. And from that start date to that first close, and I remember it well, you're in doubt. And certainly when I started my own company, it was those were large gaps. I was selling me, and I hadn't sold that me, just me, and what I could do ever. So I had to like build up that confidence, that belief, that conviction first. And then when you get success and it becomes a snowball, and then you kind of forget what caused that level of confidence. And the key is to get that as fast as possible. Get that doubt out as soon as possible. You have that ability to see beyond that current point of pain, that current doubt. Is it like, am I made for sales? Is this not going to work? Are things different in my geography, in my culture, in my country? Everyone asks that question because there's no guarantees when you're dealing with people. Think about all the interactions you have. There's no guarantee. It's based off of trust, reciprocation, time, giving. All of these things build that up. There's no guarantees, no contracts. The contracts are worthless. It is something that you can't see, you can't touch it, you can't put it in a bank. We have to build it up. Check out the courses at b2brevenue.com. I have a frequently asked questions video. It's in the show notes as well. It's on the YouTube channel. It's the first video that comes up. It's on my LinkedIn profile. I like to have it as many places as possible. But you can go to b2brevenue.com. There's two major courses. Start the conversation, get the meeting. If your pipeline is thin or you just want to find out how to have lots of conversations without the bullshit cold emails and cold calls that aren't working anymore. And, it's just crazy out there. We need to be able to talk to people. Get that word meeting out of your vocabulary. They don't exist anymore. It's conversations. And the other part is, how do you win a complex sale? And believe me, I talk to a lot of leaders. They don't know. Yes, they know how to take an order when somebody's in market, wants to buy. We all know how to do that. But how about when you get somebody in a company, wants, needs, likes, and can afford your product, but they can't get the transaction done? Add more value, build a relationship. Well, you have that. We have value. We have relationships. Still, the order can't get done. Use MedPick. It's not a forecasting problem. It's a sales problem. You have to be able to guide people through that process and help them, teach them, and nobody teaches us reps how companies buy politically, administratively. And we all teach propose or, present, demo, propose, negotiate, handle objections, close. Well, how's that working for you? Okay, you know that, and still only less than 50% of your forecasted deals come in. There is an issue. That's winning the complex sale. Now, they all are available for 1 year. You can purchase it and pay all at once, or you can pay monthly. It's not a membership, though. You agree to it is not a membership, and after you start, it doesn't change. But I do allow you to pay over 12 months, and it has office hours that are recorded and put in the course. So there's tons of them in there. It's a 1 hour meetup every other Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom. And then you have unlimited one-on-ones, 30-minute Zoom calls with me, applying the course after you've taken it to your particular situation. Those are recorded and put in the course, so you get to hear how people are solving each individual problem with a complex sale. Nobody else has this course out there at all. And as far as starting conversations, everybody's teaching the same stupid, gimmicky email BS, social selling. They're all part of it, but they're all about you and how you get to talk about you. This is how you start a conversation with a stranger. And people are people. We all came from the same DNA. No one wants to believe it, but it is. Here we go. You got to start a conversation. So check it out, b2brevenue.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Get the meeting, get that 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour demo that they forget that you need to build. You got to start where they are. not where you are, and make them come to you. They're not going to come to you. If they were going to come to you, they already would have, or they will someday. Our job is to start where they are and build up. And if you listen to the progression, these are all real reps going through really difficult situations. There's nobody in the course selling something that's easy, nor are they at a big brand name where it's just a walk in the door or an upsell. These are getting meetings with very difficult competitive roles and people kind of above, trying to really sell complex stuff, new stuff. And you get to hear that pattern over and over again. And then when you get a breakthrough and you get the smile on their face and they get their first deal or their first meeting with an executive they only dreamed of getting before, and they stop wasting their time going from one meeting a week to 10 or 20 and just have it in a system, boom, 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 becomes unconsciously competent at it after a while. Because the hard part is the change. The hard part is not doing it. The hard part is the change in mindset. But it has to take place. Just like what we heard today in this interview. The giving, the helping, that is counterintuitive. And it's not helping just for helping's sake. It's helping that builds that trust, that connection with that other person, that reciprocation that they feel unconsciously compelled to do. So make sure you're checking out the courses at b2brevenue.com. Everybody who shares my content on LinkedIn, likes it, comments on it, give it a little thumbs up. Oh, you're friends for life. Also, check out the other podcasts, Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, The Sales Leadership Show, B2B, Revenue Leadership. This is nothing but pure gold out there. I'm here working for you 24/7. We'll see you next time.